kindly ask that you mute yourself. So for those who are not familiar with Massachusetts Alliance for 21st Century Disability Policy, this alliance was formed in 2007 to protect the right of people with disabilities to self-direct, and through its efforts helped pass the Real Lives Law in 2014. MA 21 is a partnership of self-advocates, family members, other stakeholders, and disability advocacy organizations. The advocacy of MA 21 Alliance is to fully implement the Real Lives Law and the Department of Developmental Services, Medicaid, home and community-based service waivers. Just a quick follow-up from our last meeting. The proposed self-determination regulations are under final review. We'll let everyone know when they are released. If you haven't already done so, we encourage you to visit the MA 21 website and sign up for our communications. So today's agenda includes a presentation on the individual assessment and budget project, also referred to as the Path Forward project implementation. Following the presentation, we will have time for a Q&A session. Our guest speaker today is Liz Sandblom. Liz is the Department of Developmental Services Deputy Assistant Commissioner for Operations, which includes overseeing self-directed services. Liz, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and put myself on mute and let you get right into your presentation.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Leo and team, for including me in your meeting today. It's nice to see the faces that I can see on the screen, a lot of familiar faces. As Diane said, my name is Liz Sandblom, and I'm the Deputy Assistant Commissioner of Operations. I've worked for DDS for 29 years. I've worked in both the South Coastal and Greater Boston offices before coming to Central Office in 2020. In my current role, I oversee family support, community life engagement, and self-direction. And obviously, I work on some special projects as well. So I'm leading a team of DDS employees across the state, and a lot of different collaborations with consultants and some agencies to roll out this newly procured tool that assesses individuals' support needs. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to present to you all today. And I first want to thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with this group of folks that are very passionate about self-direction and certainly have helped us get where we are. And I hope we'll continue to help collaborate and partner to continue to move forward and make self-direction the best program that it can be. Some of you have heard this presentation before, maybe more than once, and some of you are going to just be hearing it for the first time. I'm just going to say it is a lot to take in. Every day I learn something a little bit new, and so I just want to let people know that. So if time allows, I'm happy to listen to questions and hear feedback. And I also will invite you all to reach out to me via email if you think of something following the presentation. I also am going to say that we don't have all the answers. We don't know what this is going to look like in 1 year, in 2 years, or 3 years. We're at a point in the project where we're really gathering information. So bear with me if you hear that response during the question and answer period. But I think the most important piece is that the direction we're moving is really to make sure that our self-direction services are consistent, that people have the same experiences across the state, are transparent, and are equitable. And we really believe that with help of this project that you're going to hear a little bit about today, that we can get there. But it's going to take a bit of time. Okay, so we practiced this, and we're hoping that it will work in real live time. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint. And I just, if somebody can just shout out or nod their head that you can see the PowerPoint. Okay, perfect.
Yes, can see it.
All right, so Leah, let's see if I can do this now. Oh, I might just have to do it from the beginning. Okay, so this is a combination of two PowerPoints that I'm going to walk through. The first few slides are just about, not just, are about our communication approach that we've been taking, and some of you might recognize a few pieces of information in the slide. So what is the path forward for DDS? As I just said, the goal of DDS is to promote the use of self-directed supports by developing a transparent and consistent means of determining individualized budgets for participants, and by simplifying access to and use of participant-driven program and agency with choice program. Essential to success is using a valid and reliable tool to assess individual support needs. And we've acquired the CISA second edition. And I just want to note that the second edition nationally is in the process of being rolled out. So it's very new. Some states that have been using the CIS original version for a long time are starting to roll out the second edition now. This is a nationally validated and recognized tool for assessing individual support needs for people with intellectual disabilities and autism. And it is it's a proprietary tool with American Association of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, AAIDD. So DDS has begun sharing this message with stakeholders and contributors, and we will be available to provide information and updates through a variety of tools. Website, which is live, so I'll show that to you at the end of this presentation. Email, newsletters, forums, and presentations. We'll begin disseminating information to participants. That started yesterday late in the afternoon, who are involved in self-directed services, the PDP and agency with choice programs. So there's about 2,200 individuals, give or take, and we will actively engage these participants to help them understand the objectives of the sample assessments and the data that will be collected through this process. So again, we commit to learning together about the changes and how new practices can be better implemented. So this is just a very, basic kind of communication implementation plan. My next slide, I have a few more details, but I would say we're straddling the project rollout in communication right now, moving towards straddling communication and scheduling. So I just want to note that communication is obviously a thread that's always going to be ongoing through as we work our way across this set of tasks that we're working on. This is for a very discrete part of this project. We anticipate the project will be ongoing over a few years. So this is our first piece of the project with agency with choice and PDP. So again, this just gives more detail, and I'll be sharing this PowerPoint out with Leo and his team following this presentation, but gives you an idea. And I have to just be transparent myself. These dates are our best guess. There's some things that are out of our control, but this is our hope as we lay out this piece of the project, which is we have ongoing meetings with Human Service Resource Institute and American Association for Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, ongoing presentations and opportunities. So again, I welcome you. If you have a group that would benefit from hearing this, feel free to reach out. I can tailor the presentation however it makes sense. The website go live, which happened late last week, and identifying and implementing the scheduling tool. Communication meeting, we had meetings with support brokers internally, and we also met with the with the ARC of Mass support brokers. We have sent out a general announcement to all participants in self-direction, and we will be sending out a second set of communication for those that will be part of the sample of 500. We're going to be sending surveys as we go through the process, getting your feedback as we reach out to you all about what your needs are. Are there different languages? Are there accommodations that we need to know about? Do you have preferred evenings or mornings, in person or virtual? So we'll be sending those surveys out before meetings are scheduled. And then we want to send out surveys following the meetings. Is it too long? Is it too confusing? Is there, is it great? Did you leave the meeting feeling revived and have a better idea of your vision and your goals? The set of 500 assessments will be administered by the professionals at AAIDD. And there will be 400 virtual and 100 in person. Those in-person assessments are going to be later in early spring. We wanted to get through the holiday season and the potential travel bad weather season. And then following those 500 assessments, the survey size, we will be working with Human Service Research Institute to really digging into the data and learning all that we can learn about the people enrolled in self-direction and what levels of support they need in groups. And you'll learn more about that later on. So some of you may have received an email late yesterday afternoon. We still have 1 or 2 more waves that are going out. If people are having trouble accessing the email or they can't find the email, you certainly could reach out to me, but you could also reach out to your area office and just ask them to forward along to you as well. This is just simply a notification about the project. It's meant to give a very high level overview, and then just to signal to folks that people may be selected to participate in the 500 sample size. And if you are selected, you will be hearing from us in early October. This down here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, the sys@dds@math.gov is a dedicated email address. I would encourage people to email that address. It goes straight to my inbox. So I'm the person on the other end. And this is a QR code that will get you to our website. If you have trouble with the QR code, up here is, I'm going to just actually, I'll pop that in the chat when I get out of this presentation, is the direct link to our newly developed website. Just a quick statement about our website. It's meant to be built upon. I want to acknowledge that when you work for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, there's certain parameters that the website has to adhere to. So we're working within those parameters. And again, as time goes on, we'll be building off of that website. So just as an FYI. Okay, I'm going to take a breath for a second. So the next section of this PowerPoint is the PowerPoint that HSRI has developed for us. This is an update to existing PowerPoints that we've been providing specifically to the Self-Determination Advisory Board. And this is specific to the project for the individuals self-directing services and for the budget development tool. So I have something right in the middle of my screen and I'm not really sure how to get rid of that. Oh. So in 2021, so Human Service Research Institute is an agency that is very much respected in terms of their national knowledge of what happens, and actually international knowledge of self-determination and self-directed services. They have been with DDS since the Real Lives Law passed. Part of the Real Lives Law was that human service or an agency had to kind of assess how we were doing. So there was a 3-year assessment that culminated in, I think it was 2018. And then in 2021, the department recontracted with Human Service Research Institute. And you'll see that we're sort of at task number 3 right now, which is really focusing on developing a budget allocation process. But that we need to, in order to get there, we need to conduct a qualitative analysis of the PDP and agency with choice programs. And we need to analyze that assessment information in order to sort of get to the next step. So the analysis has been done. We received feedback from maybe some of you all, and we're kind of going on steps 2 and 3 at this point. So HSRI has done this in many other states across the nation. I should note that 17 other states use the SIS-A and 9 Canadian provinces use the SIS-A as their tool for assessing people's support needs. Many states, I'm part of a national group at this point, and have learned that many states have worked with HSRI to develop a supports level approach. So I'm really excited to be part of this group. It's very informative for me, and it's very affirming. I'm realizing that we are not alone in this, and there's other states that we can go to and talk to about best practices and such. So as you know, a supports budget is a targeted amount of money or allocation that is made known to individual service that should be made known to individual service recipients before service planning to acquire the services they need and prefer. So generally, the amount is determined by assessing the extent of an individual's support needs while accounting for where they live, how old are they, and any other additional factors that might be considered. So then the group of us will get together and we'll agree on a service mix. What services are being utilized? At what rate are people utilizing these services? Who are the people that will typically be allocated, a certain set of services such as respite or flexible funding? And how does that fit in with their assessed need through the SIS? So there'll be sort of buckets that we'll get at. As with anything, we're working with people, we're working with extenuating circumstances. And so an exceptions review process is integral in this whole project. So as we start to gather information and start to understand what this all looks like related to the Massachusetts project, we want to make sure that extraordinary needs are addressed. We don't want anyone to fall through the cracks or be left behind. So this is an example. This is not what it's going to necessarily look like in Massachusetts. We don't know that yet. But this is an example of what a support level framework could look like. So it ranges from low to high, and then there's some other needs like medical and clinical behavioral that that states have decided are important to also, again, we don't want to leave anyone behind. So they're important to also capture. So somebody with a low need may live at home, work competitively, but need some supports with organizing their time or with paying their bills or with coordinating, their appointments. Somebody with a higher need may need, hands-on support to do a lot of their daily skills, their daily tasks, may have not be able to be home alone, may have 24-hour oversight requirements. So over time, as we're starting to gather all of our information from the assessments, we'll start to build this framework. This is a slide that HSRI loves, and I love it too because it has the star here that really helps people with service planning. So this is just talking about why are we here? What's the problem that's being addressed? What are our policy intentions? And this is where we're sort of sitting right now. Assessment and service supply. What are people's support needs? How do we develop that support level? What does a service array look like, and how does that then breakdown as far as rate structures and budget amounts and things like that. And of course, communication, as it says here, communication externally, internally, and financing are all things that we have to consider throughout this whole project. So this is a little bit about using the supports intensity scale, second edition. The SIS suite of tools really shift the focus. The assessment we use now is the ICAP. And it really does sort of look at what the person's deficiencies are, right? It assesses things like, can you climb a ladder? Can you thread a needle? You know, can you make phone calls independently? Things like this. But it really switches that to what do you need in order, what kinds of supports do you need in order to be as independent as possible over a range of life activities, as you'll see down below. The assessment is done through an interview with the person being assessed, and those who know the individual best, those are who provide the most, you know, daily support to the individual. And you really have to know the person for at least 3 months in order to be considered a respondent in this process. So as I said, it measures an individual's exceptional medical and behavioral needs. So what extra supports would be needed to specifically deal with specified medical or behavioral situations or conditions? And then there's the domains of life activities. So again, how much support is needed for the individual to lead as independent life as possible with home living activities, community living activities, lifelong learning, employment activities, health and safety activities, social activities, and protection and advocacy. So these sections are aggregated to provide a composite score to illustrate the magnitude of the individual support need, but also their need as compared to other people. I would strongly encourage you all to visit AAIDD. Their website is very clear and easily navigated. We have a link to it on our website as well. They have a great video that I would love to share, but I'm afraid if we try it, it might not work so well. But they have a wonderful video. It is about the first edition, but it gives you just a sense. It's made for individuals and for families, and they're in the process of updating it. So that second edition video will be up shortly, but the first one is still relevant and helpful to view. Okay. So during the SIS assessment, there are supplemental questions. And as a state working with AIDD, we had the opportunity to develop what we believe are important supplemental questions for us as a state. So those questions will be embedded, and the SIS assessors will be trained specifically on those 2 Massachusetts supplemental questions. Certain responses may indicate a further review of support, support needs is warranted. And then these support needs would be verified. We do not know what this looks like and what the rules around, quote unquote, rules around this are. But that's something that as we start to work through the process, we're going to develop, you know, best practices and policy around that. Verification is a record review process where an individual or a team, there may be a medical and or behavioral expert that sits on that team, would review certain circumstances to get a better understanding of the individual's needs and determine if a person's medical or behavioral support needs warrant inclusion in a specialized support level. So that's not to say that people in level 3 don't have any clinical or any, I'm going to just go back up to that. It's not to say that people in this gray level 3 have no medical and no clinical needs. We're really talking about exceptional needs that would fall in this M and B level. So where are we? As I said, we've finalized the supplemental questions. We have HSRI has submitted a data request to DDS, so they have the names of all 2,250 people enrolled in agency with choice and PDP. They are finalizing the sampling plan of 500 participants. And it's going to focus on regional membership. So where do you live and what region do you belong to? And which kind of self-direction option have you chosen? Have you chosen the participant direction option or the agency with choice option? So that we get a representative sample within our geography and within our two self-direction options. We are working towards establishing the web-based process for gathering the information, identifying the training needs. As I said, the AIDD assessors who've been doing this for a very long time are going to complete the 500 sample size, and they need to be trained on our specific supplemental questions. Together with AIDD, we review, again, best practices. We talk about certain situations where an individual might want to meet the assessor ahead of time. We want people to feel as comfortable as possible during this process. Next steps are, once the information starts to come into us from the assessors, HSRI and DDS will ensure that the interviews are completed, and we'll start to gather that data as it comes in. HSRI will also submit a follow-up data request, which will include service use and spending related to those 500 individuals that are participating in the sample size. And this is what John Augusta, who works for HSR, would say about the next task, which is, this is when it gets fun. And this is when we really sit down and complete the analysis and have a lot of really good conversations together. We talk about, making sure that we have a good representative group, and we build these support budgets. And then we will work to test the supports level framework and make sure the mixes work and that the framework works for the majority of us. We know that there's always outliers. We understand that. Participating in this 500 sample size assessment is helping us gather the data and information and make sure that we can build the best supports level framework that's within our ability, given what we have in front of us. And participating, this is not going to affect any people's supports or budgets going through these assessments. So I'm going to be really clear about that. This is just an example of what we sent for the first go round. Date of birth, male, female, race, primary language, what region, what are people's eligibility status. We've really worked with HSRI to understand the difference in eligibility that the department supports, particularly people who are ASD eligible only. They do have some services that are not available for people with ID and vice versa, right? So we really want to make sure HSRI understands those differences. Priority status is really important to us, particularly in this age where we have found that there's a lot of challenges in opening up 24-hour group homes. So we thought it is interesting to share out how many people may have been prioritized for 24/7 residential, and for whatever reason either chose not to go into it or haven't been able to go into it and are utilizing self-direction to sort of keep themselves in as safe of a situation as possible until something's available. Living arrangement is important. Again, we said the self-direction program that you've chosen, PDP or AWC, and also taking into account any traditional services you may be receiving. So remember, in Massachusetts, you don't have to just go one track or the other. People are in what we call a hybrid. They might live in a 24-hour residential program run by, I don't know, I'm just going to say VinFen, but want to self-direct a piece of their day. And so There are a variety of different combinations, but we wanted to make sure that HSRI understood the full picture of what folks were getting in terms of their services. What waiver are they in, and do they meet the level of care, yes or no? So that is it. I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to put our website in your chat so that folks have that. And I'm going to take a breath and a drink, and then I'll turn it back over to Diane.
Okay, just Liz, just let me know when you're ready. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share with the group how we're going to handle this portion of the agenda, the questions and answer. We'll have approximately 25 minutes to present questions, and what we'll do is we're gonna start. Robert Beckett is going to begin the presenting questions to Liz, and then we'll open it up to participants to present questions relating to the information that Liz has shared today. We're asking that if you want to ask a question, use the Zoom tool to raise your hand, or put your question in chat. Kathleen Amaral and we're going to do our best to oversee this, keeping track of when these questions are posted. We want to respect everyone's time, so please again, understand that this time is for questions and not for sharing experiences. I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but just being transparent. Also understand that we may not get to everyone, so if that's the case where we cannot get all the questions presented, post it in chat, or you could send your question to ma21@arcmass.org. We can go ahead and compile the questions, send them to Liz, work together to get answers to these questions, and then we can share through our through the MA21 communications, which again, I'm going to remind you, if you want the communications from us, go to the website, and if Kathleen could throw that in the chat, and then sign up. There's a link to be able to sign up for the communications. So Liz, are you good?
Yep. Can I just make one other two other statements or asks of you? We should probably go through I don't know if Robert's going to go through the questions in the chat. Is somebody going to gather the questions, or should I be taking notes? Because what I'm anticipating is that there's going to be some great questions, and we want to develop an FAQ and post it on our website. So I want to make sure that I have access. So just
we can download the chat, number one, and then Robert's starting with questions that were submitted in advance.
Okay.
So, and then we can get to as Diane said, as many as possible. Otherwise.
And what a great start, Liz. You already answered one of the questions, and that was the Okay, Robert.
Yes, this is Robert Beckett. So appreciate very much the presentation, and especially the fact that about the questions, and I think getting on the website a Q&A would be great, and also just your offer to provide a particular site we can get to. Well, they go to you for questions that you presented in the information you did. So what we did was we sent out to everybody the notice of this meeting, and we said in it, in the original one, if you want to ask questions now, we gave a previous PowerPoint that had been used by HSRI or produced by them, and if you had questions. So we had some written questions. So what we were going to do is do a couple of written questions now, and then turn it back over to the public for anybody that wants to come in on chat or on just by raising your hand and do it verbally. And then if we have time after that, we'll go back to some of the other written questions. But we'll certainly get these, my written question or the written questions I have down to Liz, and then we'll get the other questions asked during the meeting. So the first one was that, over the next few years, we understand that the SISA will be implemented for all persons eligible to receive DDS services, and that's 30,000 plus or whatever the number is, and the SD population is 2,200 or so, and it's the sole, as I understand, it's the sole group that is going to be assessed in this first year. Why did DDS decide to just focus on SD as opposed to the other 28,000 individuals? And in doing so, will that dilute the diversity of the people being evaluated, and will it affect the development of a funding allocation process that's applicable to all service delivery models? So that's the question.
Sure. Great question. So when we started presenting on this, we were really presenting this bigger vision, and we were all getting really tied up about this larger vision. So our vision is absolutely for the SIS-A assessment to replace our current assessment process, which is called the MASCAP. It includes the ICAP and a CCA. We're now breaking this down into more palatable, smaller bites. So this current project is one piece of the puzzle that we're starting now, which is only focusing on self-direction individuals. However, following this piece of the puzzle, we have made a decision that next year we are going to do a sample of folks who are in traditional services that are similar and have similar experiences and similar living age, all of that kind of stuff, as the folks from the self-direction group. So we have made that decision to do that second group of traditional service recipients. We are building an internal infrastructure of our own assessors. So one of the decisions for breaking that up, to be completely transparent, is right now we have a contract for 500 assessments with AAIDD. So the other reason is we don't want to slow our forward movement down. So if we had to change gears now and say, okay, now we want to do 1,000 across both self-direction and traditional, we would have had to sort of hold on this. So we're sort of taking a combination part 1, part 2 approach. So we will be including the traditional folks as part 2 of this smaller piece of the process. As we go forward, we have, as folks know, a lot of things that in our traditional services built into rates and such that we don't necessarily give people a budget, but we also have a lot of services that are based, the rates are based on people's level of needs and the support that they need. So we're going to build that all into this eventually way down the line, but we don't know what that's going to look like at this point. So we're really trying to focus on just really this piece of the first step of this project, which is that self-directed, like I said, group of 500. And then for the next fiscal year, we will pull from traditional service recipients, and we'll continue to work with HSRI to look at making sure that those are all fitting into the same supports level. I think I got everything.
Yeah, thank you so much for that comprehensive, I believe, answer. And of course, time will tell, how much the sample of this year fits in with the other samples, but I understand the approach, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll do a second question, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. So people get ready, because you're going to have your chance. So the SISA PowerPoint and accompanying commentaries and today's states that 400 assessments are going to be done remotely during the period of November 23rd to June 24th. Those PowerPoints, not this one, but others have said that these SIS assessments typically take 2 to 4 hours. So I think that you introduced the accommodations issues, which I think is terrific. You mentioned accommodating in person. Of course, there's going to be 400 remote and 100 in person, so that accommodation may be somewhat limited. But the question I have is 2 to 4 hours is a long time, and has consideration been given to breaking that up into 2 sessions if that's desired, and by the participants and their team members? And secondly, what about people that are not really able to utilize remote option and or don't have the potentially the interpersonal skills to do it remotely or lack computer access? So those are kind of the 2 questions. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great question. We've brought that up to AIDD quite frankly, quite frequently, because we've been receiving this question a lot. It's really interesting. We met with the state of Hawaii 2 weeks ago. They are really considered by AIDD as sort of the cream of the crop. They're very organized. They have a very specialized process for scheduling people, and they have a combination of both internal assessors, I'll say their own staff assessing, and utilizing AIDD folks. And I asked them this question because obviously they have some different geographical challenges than we have, but I asked them this question, and they said that it was really difficult at the beginning of COVID to go kind of fully remote. She said now 70% of people choose the virtual option, which they never thought would happen. They thought they were going to swing back to where they had been, pre-COVID, where the majority of people wanted it in person. So I think Massachusetts has a little bit more digging to do. I think, again, not only through this sample size are we going to learn a lot about kind of the information that helps us develop the support needs level assessment. We're going to be asking people for feedback, and we're going to be asking people about their experiences. And more importantly, we're going to be asking people about their preferences ahead of time. So we're hiring people who are going to help make in-person phone calls, talk to people about what their options are, get their preferences, and go from there. So I'm not really answering your question, I don't think, but it's a shared concern. And I don't think until we start to do it, we don't know enough. However, I'm going to say that we are not going to schedule anything for more than 3 hours, with the goal of the assessments really staying in the 2-hour range. When we were working on our supplemental questions, we got some great feedback. We have a set of questions that will be actually asked outside of the assessment about caregivers' needs. That's something that's really important to us as a state. It's something that we ask now. What are the extenuating circumstances of your caregiver? If you have a caregiver, not everyone has a caregiver, but are you a single mom working 3 jobs? Are you somebody who has housing instability? Those are all important pieces of the puzzle to really figure out about people's support needs. Initially, we thought those would be kind of embedded as part of the SIS assessment. And the feedback we got from them is it's going to make the assessment meeting go longer. And it's not about the person. The assessment is really, really supposed to be focused on the individual. And so the feedback was, let's do that outside of the process. So we really are listening to that, and we want to make the assessments as 2 things. We want to make them, we value your time, and we want to make them, we want them to be thorough, but we don't want people to feel like, oh my gosh, this is so long to sit in front of the screen or what have you. And we also want people to walk away saying, wow, look at what I just learned about myself, or look at what I just learned about my loved one. So the feedback after the assessment is going to be really important. I will bring back the question about breaking up the the meeting. That's something that we've sort of danced around, but really haven't tackled head on. I think that one of the options is that the assessor can meet the individual ahead of time, which develops a little bit of rapport before the meeting. And also you can gather some basic information before the meeting, which makes the meeting a little bit shorter as well. So that was my lots of words way of saying, I don't know yet, but more to come, but we're being very conscious of that time frame.
Okay, well, thank you for those comments. So now we're going to turn it over to questions, and I think Diane and Kathleen Amaral with the Arc of Mass, they're going to kind of head that up. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to allow Kathleen to begin with a couple of questions that were posted in the chat. Laurie, I do see your hand up, but we're going to address the try to address the questions as we receive them in order.
Excellent. Diane, I'm going to start the top two really, I think, are quick answers. The first one that came in was actually from Lori. So thank you, Lori. And the question, Liz, you may have seen it in that chat while you were doing your presentation, is what email would folks be receiving the information from? I'm assuming I'll say that first high level informative email and also the follow-up. And the second question is about participation. Is there a requirement? Is there, if somebody were to, not take the opportunity to be part of the sample?
So the first question, the email, the notification email, the majority of people, I won't get into the details of how my night went last night trying to send almost 1,500 emails, but needless to say, it had to get divided up into smaller emails. The majority of those emails will come from the sis@dds@mass.gov email address. There may be a few that snuck in from me. So one or the other is where those emails would come from. We also have a good number of physical mailings that are going out. So if folks don't have an email, or if our service coordinators didn't have an email for you, you should be getting mailings. Some went out yesterday, some are going out today, and then if there's any stragglers, we're doing cleanup tomorrow. The second question is really important in a place that I really hope we all can collaborate on. This is voluntary. The sample size is voluntary, but I just hope that we can together encourage people to participate in this sample. And I'm going to jump ahead actually to the next question as well in my answer, Kathleen. We hope to be able to give people, we have a meeting this week with both the AIDD team and UMKC, who is our technical assistance program for the Charting the Life course program. We really are hoping that we can develop an integrated support star or something that people can walk away with as a result of their SIS assessment, where they can say, look, this is where I'm really skilled, or this is where I have all these natural supports that I didn't realize I had. And what you do with that is completely up to you. You could use it as a conversation starter with your service coordinators or with your support workers or your teams, or you could go home and throw it in the trash, or you could take it and say, wait, they missed all this other stuff that I have going on, and you could scribble on it and write more things. Really up to you what you do with that. But it's really important to me, as you can tell by the way I'm talking, that because they align so nicely, the SIS-A and some of the Charting the Life course, the domains, life domains are similar and they align nicely. So we really want to try to marry those in some way. I don't know how that's going to look yet, but we're working hard at that as well. So the sample is voluntary, but I hope together we can encourage people to participate.
Great. Diane, would you like me to continue or take on?
Oh, yep, go ahead.
Okay, so the next question did come in from Deborah Flashin, and the question relates, and you're probably sorry, Liz, when developing budgets for the individuals assessing using SIS-A, will the budgets identified for self-direction participants be equivalent to those choosing traditional services?
Yep, so I think I touched on the fact that we'll have the 400 traditional sample size following this sample. And that's one of the reasons we're doing that. I'm not going to, you know, I don't know what the budgets are going to look like, so I'm not going to get into the exact how that's going to look when it comes. But, you know, that's why we have the self-directed sample size and then are going to be doing the traditional sample size so that we can really look and make sure that we're all starting at the same point, whether you're whether you're choosing traditional or whether you're choosing self-directed services.
Great. And next, it wasn't necessarily a question, but a suggestion of gender identity was a remark that there needs to be additional selection for that. And then Diane, I'll just continue. Lori had a question. Okay, it's similar. It's around gender identity and suggesting just a
yeah, can I just comment without taking too much time up?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our current system only gives us the ability of identifying the two genders. We are switching our electronic record system, and it's going to be much more inclusive going forward. Just to let people know that that's also important to us, and that change is going to be made going forward.
Great, Diane.
Go ahead and continue. There is
Okay.
someone did raise their hand, but I'm paying attention to the order of which the questions are.
Perfect. The next question, and you really kind of touched upon this a little bit, but Dolores Acevedo Garcia asked, please clarify if the SIS will be used to develop individualized budgets for each participant, each person receiving their own assessment, or the sample of 50 will be used to develop budgets for different types of clients or for the different levels.
Yeah, so the data that we're going to get from the assessments is really to develop that support level framework. And from there, there'll be budget corridors built in once we do all the final assessment. So it's not really, the SIS isn't going to identify the budget. The SIS is going to help us figure out where in that framework somebody sits, which will then inform the budget.
Great. And Diane, I can actually finish up here with the submitted questions and lump them a little bit and then ask you to just maybe elaborate a little bit more, Liz, because you did touch a little bit upon these. There was just a question around the criteria, and you did go over this a little bit, but for selecting the individuals for the pilot. And then there was some comment around elaborating a little bit more about the sample not affecting the individual's budget and the new CISA affecting the budget of participants. And then the last comment was just around something you mentioned that was important about the living arrangements and the family dynamic and caretaker needs be considered as well.
Yeah, so the criteria is region and type of self-direction program agency would choose, or PDP. The sample size will not affect the individual's budget. That is correct. I'm not sure I can elaborate any more on that. The sample size is truly for us to gather the information and the data to develop that support needs level framework. This group of 500 there will be no effect on an individual's budget. The CISA in other states is everyone gets a new assessment every 3 to 5 years. That's what the recommended time frame is, and it's really to make sure we capture changing needs of people as maybe they age or their physical health has declined, and vice versa, changing needs as people gain skills and become more independent. So where that goes in the future, I don't know. We need to really understand the data and the information that as we gather it with this sample size of 500, and then as we gather it with our next sample size within traditional services, and make sure this support level framework, which we develop, is capturing the right service array, support needs, how it all works together. And we'll be continuing. I'm sure this is not our first presentation and conversation with you all. So as we reach certain milestones, we'll make sure that we come back and get your feedback and provide updates.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you, Diane. That's all I have submitted in the chat.
Okay, so we have a question, a hands up, Xander McDonald, did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, yes.
Okay,
So given that non-binary gender is a legal option in Massachusetts, and that autistic people are more likely to be gender conforming than the general population, I know what'll happen if my offspring is chosen for this survey. They'll hit that gender question and they'll nope out right away. It is offensive. And it is not, I understand things are in place and it's hard to change things, but it really feels like marginalized people who are legally recognized in a state are, this is information being lost. This is really going to discourage a segment that definitely has been absent and needs to be heard from.
Thank you for that feedback, Xander. I appreciate that. I don't know what you said in your first statement, that if your offspring were selected, I just missed. What do you think would happen?
My offspring would say, no, I'm not doing this. That has been categorically their response when they're asked to do things when there's only a binary gender option. And I think that's pretty consistent among gender non-conforming individuals.
So let me, I don't believe there is any question related to gender on the SIS assessment, but let me bring that back to the AIDD team and get clarification. That was just a dead data point that unfortunately our data system right now is not built to give. It's not our system, it's a system that we contract with. And as I said, that is going away. But right now that was just a data point that was provided to HSRI, but I don't believe there's any specific questions related to that, but let me circle back and follow up on that one.
Gender identity does affect what supports they're able to participate in. And thank you very much.
okay, thank you, Xander, for the sharing. Kathleen, am I good to continue?
Yeah, I would continue with the folks that had their hands up, and we do have 2 more questions, but they just came in, so.
Okay, so, all right, so we have Deborah Flashen. You can unmute, Deborah.
I am being redundant. I just wasn't sure if you were going to go back to questions in the chat. I put my question in the chat, so I'll let Kathleen, excuse me, read that.
Oh, okay. So Kathleen, let's go back to the chat and then we'll jump over to Laurie Medeiros.
Sounds good. So Michelle asks that a question relative to she's currently in the process of developing a self-direction budget and asking if it would be in her best interest to wait until the SIS-A tool is in place. That was the first question.
So this is, again, I'm being redundant as well. This is just to gather information. So we would love if your person is willing to participate in the SIS-A sample, but right now the results of the SIS-A don't equal anything. You know what I mean? It's not associated with support needs levels or budget amounts at this point. We're just gathering the information and the data to start the project of developing that support level framework.
Thank you. And then Deborah's question, and then we'll move on to Lori, and then I guess Linda, unless Diane, you can update me. By choosing 500 self-direction participants as the first SIS-A cohort and choosing 400 traditional participants of like needs, are you limiting the analysis you are performing to establish budget categories? And when will the analysis include individuals receiving higher level supports? Go ahead.
So we do have a good number of individuals in self-direction that require a higher level of support. We have much more, I believe, a diverse level of needs than we did even maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But that's a good question, Deb. And, you know, this is something we're working really closely with HSRI on. They're sort of doing they have the scientific brains, and they know the right number of people that we need to be sampling in order to make the best support framework that we can. And so if we start to get in the project and we see that the information is skewed one way or the other, I anticipate that we would make corrections, but we're really deferring to them for that. The 400 number is just a number that's been thrown out there. It could be that we need more, but we're not sure yet. So we're going to get through, again, this 500 and then and start to look at that information, and at the same time be saying, okay, how do we do the next cohort of sample assessments, and what does that look like, and how many people do we really need? Remember, some people are in 24-hour supports and do self-direct a piece of their services as well.
Okay. So we're gonna go to Linda Lawn. Before doing so, I just wanted to jump back on something that Liz had shared, and I also want to take note that Linda will be the last question that we can address right now. If I understand it correctly, Liz, that these samples are more for, it's almost like practicing maybe for the department to, if the department is not going to use the information, I'm looking at it as, okay, this is an opportunity to see how is this going to work.
No, we have to get the information from the SIS tool in order to develop the support level framework. Then the support level framework, along with a lot of other data and information, will inform us on what the budget allocation process will look like going forward. So this is absolutely not practice, it's integral. And we can't move forward unless we get the data from these assessments. And again, they're very comprehensive assessments that identify where people have support needs. So,
all right, and I support that. So maybe I'll present this question just for everyone to understand more clearly, unless I'm the only one that's confused. But the data that is obtained from these sample assessments will not affect the person's SD budget or determine any support or services that is identified as a need. If that is accurate, my suggestion would be to share with the team. I'm just looking at the time. That's, 2 to 3 hours of the person's time, not to mention the caregiver and then another quote responder. So no need to comment, just some feedback. If we're going to go through if the person's going to go through all of this, utilize the information and make it right.
Yeah, I think it works both ways, Diane. So I think, if we go through all this and somebody has a higher budget and less support needs, so we really want to just say at this point, it doesn't affect the budget. I'm not saying that if we come across an exceptional situation that we didn't know about, that the area office didn't know about, that they weren't working on, that we wouldn't address that. But I think just to be fair and equitable, the idea is that this is really, like I said, to gather the data and the information. We don't want to say, oh, you have too much, and we don't want to say, oh, you don't have enough. Although, again, health and safety is our primary focus. This also looks at what other services people have, what other supports they have that might be unpaid in their lives. So I think that that's an important thing for us to think about and to bookmark for sure, that if somebody came across our desks that we didn't expect that is really underserved, how will we address that? And I will definitely take that back for sure to the team. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go to Linda, and then from there we're going to close out the Q&A.
Thank you, Diane. I am seeking further clarification on the family living arrangements or family dynamics. In some households, I mean, just having the support of a family may give the false positive that the individual is surrounded by, supports of the family. However, if there is more than one individual in the household who's receiving supports, it kind of changes the level of support that can be given to that one individual. So I'm asking if any of those types of questions are on the assessment for that data to be considered.
So, and maybe the feedback is I need to take that one slide out that had all the data points, because I think that is our internal system. We say if somebody lives independently, if they're in a 24-hour situation, or if they live with a caregiver. So those are just the buckets that we have for our internal electronic record. We have, as I said, a set of questions that will take all of those things that you just talked about into account. So those questions will be asked outside of the SIS, but will be integrated into the process. So it will be, there'll be factors that are considered when looking at budgets, when looking at priority status for services and all of that information. Again, we're the only state that does that, and it was really important for us to do that. And so we're going forward with it. And I think AIDD and HSRI are really excited about seeing how that works. So in that case, we're a test state, Diane. But I think the questions are really thoughtful. They're also somewhat sensitive. So asking them outside of a group where there's other respondents present, I think is also acknowledging the sensitivity of some of those questions, and hopefully will offer some privacy and opportunity for people to be honest about answering those.
Okay. Laurie, did I miss you have a question? I see your hand and then you disappear, so I apologize.
Well, I didn't want to hang it there. I felt like that was a little rude, so I put it down and was just waiting. Do you mind if I interject a question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so this one kind of goes back, a few steps, because the support level framework, determines the support needs, right? So data drives dollars, totally understandable. But the support needs then needs to fit a code and a service category. And there's a max in which a code will pay or a service category will pay. And for a lot of folks who've been using self-direction for a little bit now, they're already at the max of the high end of what they would pay someone, whether it's in-home supports or community supports, because of how high of a need that individual is. So now it's probably been, I don't even know, maybe 5 years or so. And this, what we're talking about now, doesn't address that those service categories continue to have a kind of cap on them. So I could never pay more than the cap that I'm already at, which then worries me because I can never give a raise.
Yep, we're aware of those challenges. And again, as part of this project, I believe that some of those challenges will be addressed.
Okay. All right, Anne, I see your hand up, and after Anne, really, because I
just have one comment, and that's that we be very careful that this remain person-centered. And that I agree that it's hard to give raises with a cap. I actually told one person that I can't give her a raise because of the cap. But this should stay person-centered, and regardless of what any of the challenges is, and that's that should be one of our main goals, that the person is in control of their plan.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Anne. Yeah,
Thank you, Anne.
definitely. Okay, so, all right, so friends, again, I want to respect everyone's time, and, Liz, thank you so much, for presenting today and taking the time to answer these questions. Our next MA 21 meeting is Tuesday, November 14th, same time, 1:30. And I just want to point out that all of the upcoming MA 21 meeting dates are on our on the website. So just again, go to the website to get that information. The next self-direction advisory board meeting, SDAB, is December 6th at 10 a.m. You can go to the SDAB website. I know, Liz, you typically post the agenda a couple of days before the meeting.
Well,
along
it's
with
supposed to be a
people.
week, but we had a little hiccup in September with the holidays, so
Okay.
it's usually a week before.
All right, good. And what else? Oh, my goodness, great news. We now have the fact sheet on the Real Lives Law in Portuguese and Spanish, which I believe is now on the website, on the MA 21 website. And so that is like hot off the press, yay. So again, thank you for joining us. We have about 10 minutes or so. If anyone who want to just stay on, would be happy to chat. But again, wanted to respect everyone's time. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Liz, over and over. And for those logging off, have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Diane, well, everyone's getting off. Someone asked about, was it clear that the person that asked about doing their own self-directed budget, that they shouldn't wait since it'll be over, that was clear, right? That they should go ahead and do it because it's going to be 1.5 years, 2 years before this is all integrated, right?
Right.
Best case scenario.
Mm-hmm. A lot of great questions. I believe that today's webinar will help DDS to be able to put their FAQ together and get it posted on their website.
I'll send a Zoom